Victor's Village is meant to be a place of reward, somewhere to show that you have survived the Hunger Games against all odds. But is that really what it's like? Let's dive a little bit deeper. So we all know that the Victor Village is an area that's been built by the capital, and there's one in every district. Now it's located slightly further away than the other houses from the district centre and from the main town. But it's only meant to house the Victor winners. And depending on the district, that could just be that 1 or 2 people actually live there. Typically, it's fancy, it's fully furnished, it's got running water, it's got electricity, and it's got plenty of space. A stark difference to how we see Katniss's house in the beginning, in the very first Hunger Games film, which is obviously a lot smaller. It comes across like dark and dank. It's not as fancy as the Victor villages are and the Victor houses. It's definitely got a lot more luxury than what most district systems are used to. I say most because obviously we've got 1, 2 and 4, they're the career districts, so they typically are looked after a little bit better. So for them, I'm guessing when they move into the Victor Village, it's not actually that much different. They just have another house or a house to themselves. Another big difference for the Victors is they get a lifetime supply of food and money, but also fame. Whether they want it or not, they'll always be known as the person who won their Hunger Games, just purely because of where they live. I think residents are probably quite isolated, because typically, as we know, there's not going to be that many people living in these houses. For instance, District 12, Haymitch was there by himself for a very long time before Katniss and Peter won their Hunger Games. So they're very much on their own. And I think depending on the character of the person who is living there, they'll either love that isolation, maybe they'll appreciate it because they know what they did, their actions to get them there. Or some people will hate it because they don't like being alone. It will definitely depend on the individual person. The houses are designed to be beautiful. I don't think you're meant to want for anything. It's very much meant to be, the capital thanks you for your sacrifice and for what you did and all that sort of stuff. I think it's meant to be, like some sort of like sadistic, sad, weird thanks from the capital, but actually they're eerily quiet. Because, like I said, there's no one else there. So if you are literally just maybe from a district where you just had 1 or 2 victors, it's going to be very, very quiet in that particular area, and there's going to be a lot of emotion in those houses in that district. Now, if you've read Sunrise on the Reaping, you'll know how Haymitch feels, and he definitely, the way that you see him in the Hunger Games books and movies, it gets explained very, very well why that happens and how that comes about in Sunrise on the Reaping. So when you kind of come to his time in the houses, in the Victor's Village, I can kind of understand why he is the way he is. I'm trying not to give too much away, and it's really hard. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of emotional baggage, and I want to go as far as to say guilt as well for some of these victors because of what they had to do to get where they are. The other thing as well is that depending on, I guess, the district you come from, maybe who and what and how you had to kill to get where you are, you're either going to be loved by the district residents or you're going to be completely resented by them. And there's no real sense of belonging when you're a victor, because no one else in your district can relate to you. And, I guess if you came back but someone else from your district didn't, there could be a bit of resentment there as well. So I think you definitely probably have this sense of longing to belong, but you don't fit in anywhere. That's definitely the impression that I've got. I imagine if you went down into the main district centre, people, I don't know how well received you would be, unless potentially you're one of these careers and they just think that you are just fantastic. Maybe maybe that's a difference in district culture. So, as I've mentioned, it definitely comes across that you have a reward from the capital for what you've done. Well done, you have won, you've survived till the end. But actually, it is a tool of control. So the capital is constantly watching, and especially when a rebellion is stirring, they will know. They have surveillance everywhere. So I completely believe that there's probably surveillance in the house. There's probably, surveillance around the districts for definite. But I do think that as a victor, you're probably got the sense of potentially rebelling on your mind. So they could be that they've bugged the houses as well. And I completely feel like that's something Snow would do. I can't remember if that is actually a fact in Hunger Games or not, but I would believe that that would be something that could happen anyway. And also, as we know, like with the Quarter Quell, victors can be dragged back into the games. So, if you upset someone as a victor, they're just going to be like, well, let's have something else with a new rule and you're going back in. So you're never actually safe, even as a victor. So the victor's village, the victor's house, doesn't give you any sense of security whatsoever. Like I said, no belonging, no security. I think you just exist at that point. You're probably definitely a shell of the person you were before, and being in these houses probably makes you feel even more distant than you were previously. So there's also the emotional toil just to kind of throw into this as well. So most victors will live with PTSD, survivor's guilt, trauma. I do think there'll be a certain few, like I said, probably from those career districts, who are just like, I did what I had to do to get home. Like, they maybe won't have as much, what's the word I'm looking for? Guilt, I guess, or resentment to themselves of what they had to do. They can probably live themselves quite easily. But I think a lot of victors who weren't trained from a young age illegally, like the careers were, they've probably seen a lot of things that they weren't prepared for. The training sessions couldn't have prepared them for, and they'll probably never get over either. Like we know, Katniss in the second game book was getting kind of PTSD whenever she tried and shoot her bow and arrow, so we kind of know that she was affected as well. So a lot of them will turn to vices. So Haymitch turned to alcohol. Definitely tells you about that in Sunrise on the Reaping. It's really, really interesting the way that Suzanne Collins has done that, and I think it's very clever. You have the Morphlings go to drugs. That's how they cope. Or you have isolation, and I think Katniss turns to isolation a little bit as well, and Haymitch definitely turns to isolation to begin with, until Peter and Katniss can come along and kind of show him that it's okay. He can be around people. Not everyone's going to get hurt, especially after Snow is killed. It kind of resolves everything. But again, I don't want to give you anything away from Sunrise and the Reaping. But a lot of it, when you read that book and then you look at Haymitch through the books, and then at the end you can kind of piece everything together as to how he was affected by his time in the games as well. The other thing as well is that the capital will use the victors. They will use them to mentor new tributes. It will completely cause them to relive their trauma yearly, and it makes them part of the capital's propaganda machine. They're never off the train, as Haymitch says. Regardless if it's metaphorical or physical train, you're always going to be on this cycle of you are under the capital's thumb now. You are their mouthpiece. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of emotional toil in there. So let's just look at the victors' villages. Let's look at a couple of actual districts as well. So District 12, so there are only 3 houses ever occupied. So you've got Haymitch, Katniss and Peter. With Mockingjay, it gets bombed, District 12 capital village, but later on it is rebuilt. And I'm gonna say, and I can't remember if this is in the books or if it's just my thought, but my thoughts are that they probably rebuilt it the way they wanted. And it probably took away some of the ghosts as well that victim village probably held. So if you think that, you know, when Katniss was there, she had Snow visit the house, and all this kind of like nasty stuff would happen, and all the trouble with Gale and all that sort of stuff, that all happened whilst that house was built. So once that was knocked down, she could probably let the ghosts go, and she could probably feel like she had a fresh start. So District 1 and 2, now they're likely to be more populated, as I mentioned, and they're probably a bit more glamorous due to there being careers and how frequently they win, but also because of the type of goods that District 1, 2 and 4 supply to the capital. I honestly believe that their houses anyway would be quite nice, or be at least nicer than you have in the other districts, and therefore when they go to the Victor's Village, is there really much difference? Maybe just the constant money coming in, maybe that is the main difference. I'm not sure. And as we know, post rebellion, Katniss and Peter returned to District 12, Victor Village, to try and rebuild a quiet life, and they obviously spend a lot of time with Haymitch as well, which is really nice for them, because they're the only people in District 12 who really know what it's like and what they've been through. So I think it's really nice that they do have each other, you know, to share that with. So let's look at what it is symbolically. So symbolically, the Victor's Village is a gilded cage. It's lovely on the outside, it's stunning, but it's a constant reminder of what the capital does to their district and the horrors that they put them through. It gives an illusion of reward, like I mentioned, but it keeps the victors trapped in a life that they never chose. They didn't want to be reaped. Obviously, I know that I think you could get more grain if you put your name in more times or something like that to keep your families fed if you did get picked. But when you're then picked and you're reaped, and if you are one of the fortunate ones to get home again, your life is never the same. You never chose to be a tribute, but that is what happened, and you're part of this cycle that you just can't get out of. So the Victor's Village is one of those symbols. Now, it's a quiet symbol, but it shifts a lot in meaning after the war ends in Mockingjay, and it changes a lot from Katniss's perspective. So let's look into that. So, as we know, District 12 was bombed to ruins by the capital. Most of the district's people were either killed or they fled to District 13. And after the war, Katniss survives the only surviving part of District 12, which was the Victor's Village. I mean, of course they wouldn't bomb the thing that the capital had to put money into. It's like, why would they? There was no one there anyway. Kind of guess what would be the point. Now, when she gets back, it's obviously quiet. There's probably no bird song, there's no children laughing, there's no dogs barking. Their houses are standing, but the place feels empty, it feels haunted, it feels isolated. And the Victor's Village, like I said, is untouched, and what it does is it basically becomes a relic of a world that doesn't exist anymore. After Snow was killed, after the Hunger Games was stopped, well, not, I guess Snow was killed, but also President Coin was killed, this whole idea of the Hunger Games just vanished. That sort of fear that your children are going to get raped and your child might not live to the age of 18, or you might have to watch them die, that vanished. And those houses represented that old way, that old thought. So we know that Katniss settles back into her house, but it's not glamorous anymore. It's quiet. It just is a house. There's no glamour, there's no glitz, there's no luxury there. Peter joins her later, and they rebuild their lives and the village together. And this once imposing place of luxury now becomes a place of sanctuary. And it stops really being a prison because they know they're not on this conveyor belt for the capital anymore. They can be themselves, away from politics and the capital. And we know that after all of this, Katniss and Peter do actually get together and they have some children. This village definitely becomes a home, not a monument to violence, not a, you have survived, you're the last one, here's a house for your reward. This is what that stood for. But now it really stops being that. And it's never described as bustling. Katniss and Peter might be the only ones living in this village, of course, but life is there. So gardens are growing, children are laughing, dogs are barking again. It has life. It stops becoming, it's not desolate anymore, it's not run down, it's not abandoned. They've changed the meaning behind what this Victor's Village meant. They've survived the rebellion now, not the games. And I think that's a really nice way to rebuild their lives, rebuild the houses if they wanted to, and then rebuild the meaning. So before the war, it definitely represented luxury for control, trauma and isolation, and capital dominance. And after the war, peaceful survival, healing and family, and the rebellion won. And that's it, guys. I'm really, really into, at the moment, looking behind the scenes of everything that we get shown. So in any franchise, we see the normal, the bit that they want us to see. So we see the characters, we follow them, we follow the story. But I'm really interested in finding out a bit more about the other side. So the houses in the Hunger Games, for instance, or the tribute training. Things like the books that were in Harry Potter, but now we can read in our world. Things like that. If you have any ideas of videos you want me to do, guys, let me know. I'm more than happy to listen to any ideas. Don't forget to subscribe, it helps me out a lot. As I mentioned in my last video, we've hit 200 subscribers. I'm so excited, so thank you to everyone who has subscribed, it means a lot. And until next time, you take care.